Okay, so today we are going to be doing my February monthly wrap. This month my time was very much divided between reading and a whole host of other things, so I'm just kind of happy to be here and do this monthly wrap, let alone have been able to read books this month. Let's put up the stats on the screen right now. So this month, in the month of February, I read a total of 9 books comprising of 4 fantasy, 1 sci-fi, 1 classic, 2 mysteries, and 1 horror. For my age groups, I read 4 YA, 3 adult, 2 middle grades. For my lengths, I read 3 tomes, 4 half tomes, and 2 novellas, totaling an amount of 3,126 pages, which works out roughly to be about 112 pages per day. As to my star ratings, I have 2 5 stars, 6 4 stars, and 1 3 star. We're going to start off with the books that I DNF'd this month. Now, I did speak about both of these in a lot more detail in my seasonal DNFs video for summer. Okay, so I'm just going to be very brief with this here at this time, but just to go over them again, the first book that I DNF'd was House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, the first book in the Crescent City series. To cut a long story short, the reason why I DNF'd this book was because it just wasn't the book for me. I just was not reeled in by this book. I didn't find this book entertaining. I did get at least 200 pages in before I eventually DNF'd. Yeah, it just wasn't the book for me. The second book that I DNF'd in the month of February was this book, Wicked by Gregory Maguire. I originally picked up this book because I had never seen the musical, and so I thought this would be a really good compromise, having been a fan of The Wizard of Oz and wanting to see things from the Wicked Witch of the West's perspective, which is what this book is about. I got 86 pages into this book before just realizing that the writing style just wasn't for me. It was incredibly heavily descriptive, and the writing yeah, it just felt like it was written in ye olde English, and I just wasn't resonating with it at all. Okay, so let's get on to the books that I actually did read for the month of February. Pretty Little Liars by Sarah Shepard. Okay, so this is a YA mystery book, and the basic premise of this book is that we are following 4 girls. The book starts off with 5 girls who are in high school, they're having a sleepover, and during the middle of the night, one of the girls, who is the leader of the group and the queen bee of their high school, ends up going missing. And so the remaining girls are trying to work out where she is and what's going on with her. In the meantime, we come to find out that the girl that went missing, whose name is Alison De Laurentiis, has died, and after the girls go to the funeral, they start receiving messages from an antagonist, an elusive antagonist, who calls themselves A. So we are trying to find out what the heck is going on with A, well, and who A is, while at the same time A is trying to expose little secrets that these girls do have. I thought overall that the book was okay, but I've seen the show, like every single episode of Pretty Little Liars, before I read this first book, and I do have to say that comparatively, I do feel that the show was better. It's fine, it is what it is, but when you're used to the show and the girls acting in a very mature way, and then you're getting these girls in a very immature sense in the book, it's a little bit off-putting. What will keep me going with the series is this antagonist A, and, you know, trying to work through the mystery of who is A and all that stuff. So I did appreciate that. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. The next book that I read was actually book number 2, which was Flawless, same author, Sarah Shepard, book number 2 in the Pretty Little Liars series. So again, it is a YA mystery, continuing on the story from book 1. Book number 2 was okay, but again, I had the same issue. I found the girls did come across as rather immature, but I again appreciated the whole the A-ness of things, if you get my drift, with our antagonist being A. I really did appreciate that whole side of it, and, you know, everything that they were trying to do, despite the fact that they were the antagonist, they were trying to bring some things to light, and I really did appreciate that. And we still haven't uncovered who A is by the end of book 2, but I am reading book 3 in March, and so I'm hoping we uncover A by then. I gave this book, as with book 1, 4 stars. This book, Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger. Now, this book is a middle grade fantasy, and this book came highly recommended by a fellow booktuber, Troy, from booktuber channel Troy Reads. I had actually purchased this book at some point last year, but I got to a point last year where I didn't want to open up any new series, so I shelved this until 2021, and I was so happy, as I'm sure you guys saw when I did my TBR video for February, when this book came out of the drawer. It was like, yay, I'm finally reading this thing. And you know what? This book did not disappoint. From start to end, I just had an amazing time reading this. We're following a girl whose name is Sophie, who I really don't want to give too much away because, you know, spoilers, but I will say this. Sophie is out on a field trip with her classmates, and she's feeling a lot of different things that are coming through to her thanks to the people who are around her. And this is something she's kind of gotten used to, because when she was younger, she was in a car accident, and ever since that car accident, she's been able to, I mean, shall we say, read minds or feel the feelings of others, and this is something that she's finding very tough to deal with. She ends up going out onto the street and certain things happen, and due to a series of events that occur that I won't spoil, she ends up meeting a guy who explains to her what's actually going on with her, and there is a lot more to her than meets the eye. She finds out that she has certain abilities, which is obviously the case because she can feel things, you know, on behalf of other people. But what I love about this book, and the tagline here at the bottom says perfect for fans of Harry Potter, and I agree with this 100%, because once Sophie finds out what she is and she goes into that world of others who are like her, she ends up being placed into a school for those types of beings. This was just absolutely incredible. Following Sophie's journey was just a thrilling ride from start to end, and it goes to show anyone who kind of shames middle grade out there, I am here to provide the biggest rebuttal. I've read some of the most amazing middle grade books, and Keeper of the Lost Cities is definitely one of them. I gave this book an overwhelming 5 stars, and Exile, which is book 2, I have added to my March TBR. This book that I'm putting up on your screen right now, The Hope of Elantris, which is a novella that was released by Brandon Sanderson in conjunction with his book Elantris, which I have right here. So in January, I read this book. In February, I read this one. This novella is, the best way to describe it is kind of like it being a deleted scene from this book. I did enjoy it, absolutely. You know, having just come off of reading Elantris in January, and I do highly recommend, if you're going to read The Hope of Elantris, to read Elantris first and then jump right into The Hope of Elantris, because it literally is a deleted scene. And therein lies my issue with this book as well. While I did love this book and appreciated that I already knew the characters, I was already invested in the world and the magic systems and all that kind of stuff, this book was so incredibly short that by the time I was feeling like we were going somewhere with this book, the book came to an end. So, you know, look, it is what it is, and generally this book is found within a one-book bind-up of many different short additional, shall we say, deleted scenes, if you will, from other books from Brandon Sanderson's Cosmic Universe. So I can understand that, but I just wanted to read one of the books from Arcanum Unbounded this month, being The Hope of Elantris, so that did kind of affect my star rating. I end up giving this book 4 stars only because, with it being so short, there was just not enough time to get invested in it. City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. This is book number 3 in the Shadowhunters series. I think my biggest problem with reading book 3 was that there was a lot of time that, you know, in between reading book 2 and book 3. Because with book 1 and book 2, I practically read book 1, ordered book 2 online, read another book in between, and then straight away went on to book 2 after, you know, like 2 books later, I went on to book 2. Where by the time I got to book 3, I'd probably read about 10 books. So it was kind of hard to get right back into this world. In saying that, I have seen the Shadowhunters series, the TV series, and I absolutely loved every moment of it. I just wish, we could have more. But anyway, it is what it is, and I'm a mad, Malik fan all the way. And I appreciate the appearances of Malik throughout this series. Because this is book 3, there's not really a lot I can say about it other than my thoughts and feelings, which are that there were some lulls here and there, which I didn't really appreciate, but aside from that, it was still a good book. I feel like with Cassandra Clare's books, they take me a little while to get into. I think she's just trying to lay some kind of foundation at the beginning of the book, but once we get past all that stuff, I do get hooked into the book. With this one, there were some lulls though, so I do need to keep that in mind. The epilogue, which all of her books that I've read so far in this series have included epilogues, was just as amazing as the epilogues were in books 1 and 2. I feel like one of the biggest pros I can give Cassandra Clare is she knows how to wrap up a book. With her epilogues, she goes through the perspective of every single character to make sure we're checking in with everyone to see how everyone is post the final climax. I end up giving this book 4 stars. Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This is a young adult fairy tale retelling, and the genre is sci-fi, of Cinderella. This is book 1 in the Lunar Chronicles series. The Lunar Chronicles series is incredibly well known on BookTube, incredibly well known in the United States, but not so incredibly well known to casual average readers here in Australia. And let's just say that in order for me to get a copy of this book, I had to actually get it delivered from the United States. Look, I'm probably going to disappoint some people who love this series because for me, I felt that Cinder was rather monotone throughout the whole book. I will and have to give credit to the final climax of this book. It was amazing. It kind of came out of, left center, left field. I did not expect it at all. And oh my gosh, it was just such an amazing way to end this book. I really thought up until the 3/4 mark that I was going to give this book like 1 or 2 stars, but I ended up giving it 3 stars because of how great the ending was. Goosebumps, Book 1, welcome to the Dead House. Welcome to Dead House. I keep saying the, but there is no the in this. In March of 2020, I picked up one of the books in the Goosebumps series. I'm not going to put an image on the screen. It's called Goosebumps My Hairiest Adventure. If you go back and watch my March wrap-up for 2020, so round about a year ago, 11 months ago, you'll see me saying how incredibly disappointed I was with that book. I even did a dedicated review for it, because if I'm passionate about a book, whether I love it, 5 stars worth, or I love it 1 star worth, I'm going to do a review to show you all my feels and, what I thought of the book. And with that one, with My Hairiest Adventure, it let me down in so many ways. I did not find it scary at all. Even for a middle grade level, I just didn't find it scary. But the ending was so good. And then the ending was... also, by the way, I do discuss this in my top 10 least favorite or worst books of 2020. The last 2.5 pages were absolutely incredible. But then they kind of just cut you off at the knees at the end when you get this massive reveal. And it's like, yay. And then like 2.5 pages later, it's done. And it's like, really? Come on. This was the redeeming book for the Goosebumps series in every way. I gave this book 5 stars, which shows a lot because I gave My Hairiest Adventure 1 star and I gave this one 5 stars. This was what I expected from R.L. Stine. This was what I expected for a middle grade horror. It's not a YA or an adult horror by any stretch of the imagination, but it is horror for middle grade. Yeah, absolutely. It was so incredible. We follow this family, a mum and dad, a son and a brother and a sister, and they move into a house because their uncle has died and he left them his house in their will. So they move in and creepy things start happening in the house. And we learn more and more about why these creepy things are happening. It's a short book, so there's not a lot I can say throughout the course of the book. And this book just was... I loved it from the beginning, and then the more we went along, it just got better and better and better and better and better and better and better. And oh my gosh, the way it ended was so good. So I was so happy with this. I'm not reading a Goosebumps book in March, but I am incredibly motivated to pick up book number 2. I think it's called Welcome to the Basement. I'm very much incredibly excited to pick up the second book in the Goosebumps series because this one redeemed R.L. Stine in my eyes. An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard. And I can't help but think, finally. I picked up this book thanks to a recommendation from Murphy from BookTuber channel Murphy Napier. And Murphy has been recommending this book for an incredibly long time. I've had this book for an incredibly long time. I just never had the opportunity to actually get to this one. But I do have to say, overall, I did feel quite let down by this book. I think Murphy really loved it, and that's absolutely fine. But for me, I ended up walking away giving this book 3.5 stars. I think the premise of this book was amazing, and I loved the idea of it. I just think sometimes with the execution, there were things I didn't appreciate. So we're basically following an unseen world. So we have the human world, and then there's an unseen world of magic. And in this unseen world, there are all these houses, you know, house of this, house of that, and they kind of compete in this like magical tournament where the winner of the tournament, the winning house of that tournament, becomes the leading governing body house for this entire unseen world, which is a really great idea. Entering our protagonist Sydney, who is has been living among the humans. She's incredibly gifted, and it provides an entertaining story of Sydney making her way through a tournament as best she can. One thing I did love about this book when it came to the magic system were the consequences. I absolutely appreciated that because there are consequences to using magic, and you don't see that a lot. So there are things you kind of need to sacrifice in order to be able to do magic, or if you don't sacrifice it at the beginning, then there's a sacrifice that's made at the end of the magic that the caster has to deal with, and I really did appreciate that. One thing I did not appreciate about this book was that I found the actual magic, not the consequences, but the actual magic, to be rather limiting as far as Kat Howard's descriptions were concerned, so I did not appreciate that. As I said, I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. I think overall it was a good book. Would I call it amazing? For my own personal taste, not really, but I can see how others would like this book. And the final book that I read in the month of February 2021 was this book, Rebecca, by Daphne du Maurier. I absolutely love this cover. This is the 80th anniversary, if you can read that there, I don't know if you can, but the 80th anniversary edition of Rebecca. Just a gorgeous cover. This was my classic of the month, so it's an adult classic. We have an unnamed protagonist. Can we just celebrate that for a moment? Nowhere throughout the course of this entire book is our protagonist's name actually mentioned. And I think that that was a genius idea from Daphne du Maurier. But our unnamed protagonist starts off at the beginning of this book. Officially, the term is companion, but really, she's hired to be a slave to this very snobbish woman who treats her absolutely horribly. And they are staying in a hotel in Monte Carlo. One day during a lunch, the lady that she works for decides to sit down and have a chat with a very well-known widower by the name of Maxim de Winter. Ultimately, the slave owner woman ends up getting sick, so she becomes bedridden, and our unnamed protagonist will continue to go down to the lobby to have, you know, dinners and lunch and whatever. And while she's there, she meets up with Maxim in private, and they end up basically falling for each other. Maxim ends up asking her to leave with him and, you know, leave the woman and leave with him, and to basically marry him and go and live with him at the place where he lives, Manderley. And even the slave woman, the one that hired our protagonist, says Manderley is absolutely beautiful and da-da-da-da-da. So our protagonist, feeling that this is going to be the best choice for her to make, ends up agreeing to marry Maxim and leave the slave owner woman behind. I mean, they call it companion, but I mean, it's really not companion. It's just a nice way to word it. So she leaves the companion boss woman and goes off and marries Maxim in a very quick way. They go to a judge's hall and get married and like sign signatures and voila, it's done. And then they go back to Manderley together. Our unnamed protagonist, who is henceforth known purely as Mrs. De Winter, because she's now married Maxim, ends up finding out a lot of things about Rebecca, who was Maxim's late wife. And there are a lot of things that play out in this book. The first thing that I'll address is that I absolutely loved this. I felt that the writing style was absolutely beautiful. I felt very lost in this book. It was one of those situations where I'm reading a book and everything else just melts away, and I'm just so completely captivated by this book. This book was written in the 1930s, and I very much felt like I was physically transported back there, and I was living amongst these people in the 1930s, which was just really, really awesome. And then we get towards the end, there's a massive climax where we find out certain things that I'm not going to say what it is, because spoiler, but whoa, was that amazing. So I was all set up for an amazing ending and giving this book 5 stars. Unfortunately for Miss Du Maurier, the way this book ended made me relegate my rating back to 4 stars, or more officially 4.5 stars. It cuts you off at the seams. So basically, I can't say much, but what I can say is we have our characters going somewhere to do something, and then when they're just about to get to wherever it is they're going, they notice something. And that's how the book ends. You know, the book ends with our protagonist saying, and then I noticed this. And it's like the end. And I had a moment where it was very much shockingly brought back to my reality, going, hang on, wait, what do you mean the end? Hang on, no, this doesn't work for me. I'm just not someone who likes to, you know, have endings where it's the whole, let's leave this ending up to the reader's imagination. I don't like that at all. On the whole, I absolutely loved it. I was just really let down by how abruptly the book just ends. These are most of the books that I read in the month of February 2021. Thank you so much for watching. What did you read? Let me know in the comments below. But in the meantime, letting you guys go, peace, blessings, and so much love. And until my next video, mwah, I'll see you next time. Happy reading!